The Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast is presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Sign up for DraftKings Sportsbook. Download their top-rated app. Use promo code RTRS. It's brought to you by Body Bio. Get 20% off Elite Calm or Liposomic Vitamin C with promo code RTRS20 at bodybio.com. Adam Ksebe, the official realtor of The Process. LL Pavorsky Jewelers, where Rights to Ricky Sanchez listeners go and get engaged. And Kinetic Skateboarding, get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver. On the show today, maybe Tyrese Maxey is not a team guy as he abandons the Summer League Sixers to go host his basketball camp at a crucial moment, no less. Does Mike still believe Jaden Springer is a rotation player this year? We are still in JJ Redick's head, as several people notify us about a comment on his recent podcast, which we will play back. And the Ben Simmons, Damian Lillard situations continue to drag on, while Joel Embiid has not signed his Supermax extension. Without any further ado, Amos and the Chef.
We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We was right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. We were right, y'all. We were right. Even when it went wrong, we were right. We were right, y'all. We were right. So say the name. Say the name. Say the name.
Welcome to the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast. I'm Spike Eskin, along with a guy who got his taste of the hosting chair and will never go back. That is Mike Levin. Go ahead, buddy. It's all yours.
No, too much work. Way too much work. Reading the ads, talking to CJ. Oh, no, CJ's great. I love CJ. No, too much work. He did ask me, like, all right, so like, what's your rundown? And I was like, don't have it. Don't got it. Don't need it. We're winging it. But yeah, too much work. Happy to be the guy that just says the shit on the side here.
It's funny, like of course, every time something like this happens, there's the great, now get Spike off the podcast, and all I can think is like, well, good luck, like having the podcast, because even if you hate me, at least I prepare the stuff, So it is a little bit of work, but and 90 minutes too.
Big mug of basketball coffee.
90-minute pod.
I didn't plan. I mean, it's just we had to get through every member of the Sixers Summer League team. I don't know. We had to. And there was no one to stop us, and it was fun.
Yep, no one at all. No one to give that glassy-eyed stare that I will occasionally do when things like that happen.
Not at all.
So I'm doing my first pod from my new home office in my new home in Springfield, New Jersey. So here I am. It's a quiet street. Probably won't hear many cars. Nothing on the walls yet. But here I am in New Jersey paying more taxes. So if you notice more taxes, yeah, that's where I'm doing the podcast from. So speaking of the Summer League Sixers, Tyrese Maxey did an approved absence from the Sixers to go run his basketball camp. Sixers respond by losing by 20. Speaking of Maxey, and MOC wrote a column on rightstRickySanchez.com about some Summer League thoughts he had. I was shocked, not surprised by fan reaction to Maxey, and certainly not surprised by yours. Surprised that Mike was buying it right away. Like Mike, even after Summer League, is like, this guy is starter level player, maybe. I guess like I'm encouraged, but I guess we've seen so many Summer League things that I don't know what to take from it. Maybe I'm scarred from all of our years that I can't just see someone playing in Summer League and assume that everything's great again. So maybe I take it with more of a grain of salt than I should if I wanted to have real fun,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just he never got to play Summer League initially last season because of COVID, and he was young, a freshman that didn't really get to play a ton of point guard at Kentucky. That got to step in and play over the course of the season and into the playoffs, occasionally major rotation minutes, in and out of the rotation as rookies are, but proved like he belongs. And so it was, hey, when he's the focal point of this team, can he carry a load? And he really did those first 2 games. And I thought it was impressive just that he was taking those shots. So many times we've seen guys like decide not to take those shots that he's less comfortable with, and he's like, no, I need to get better at this. I need to get better at shooting off the dribble. I need to get better at pulling really quickly, and without much of a conscience. And I thought he still created and still found guys, still got to the rim, still hit the floater, got to the line a little bit more. There's still got things to work on. Like, he's obviously not a finished product, but I think as far as the team as currently constructed, obviously with the big Ben thing hanging over everything, it's really hard not to be like, well, we need that skill set. We need that skill set really bad, especially if he's willing to make guys pay for going under on a pick and roll. And so, yeah, would I rather have a Tyrese Maxey in 5 years be the starter, or even Damian Lillard or whatever it has to be? Of course. But like, they really need this skill set bad. And so I think 100% he has to be, pending a Ben trade, like, considered a real focal point of this offense until they trade for somebody better.
Yeah, I mean, the starter thing won't work until I'm operating under the assumption that Ben's not here, and then I don't think Maxey starts because the Ben trade eventually nets them a player that plays his position. But instead, we can defer to your handling of that sort of thing, in which he will play more minutes. And you mentioned they could use a skill set. It's the most important skill set in the NBA on offense, pretty much, is what he's, if he can actually shoot, if that shot improvement and willingness to shoot is real, which we saw, by the way, it improved at least his willingness throughout the year. Absolutely. So I have no doubt that it is real. Like, they could absolutely use him, no matter what their roster is. There's no way they won't be able to use him. So
yeah, it's already a bummer to think like that they'll if it is Dame, which would be awesome. Dame and Embiid would be ridiculous, but like, gotta be cool to find a way to keep him also, because Maxey, he's just cool. He's so fun to root for. He's so easy to root for. He plays his ass off. He's fun. He's smiling. He's flying around out there. Tries on defense even though he's a little undersized. Just like plays. I mean, you can see him trying to play more selfishly in summer league. Like, they want him to be like, "Hey, go get your shot," but he still loves to involve guys. Like, it's just cool. I will feel. Obviously, the Lillard trade is like the best chance that they have at getting to the finals and then really finally contending in a serious way. But if we had the options in front of us, like a Lillard trade where you trade everything, maybe except for Matisse, or whatever the like step down from that is, where you get to keep Maxey and go, well, what about his development? And maybe that gets you the Lillard, like as good as Lillard plus the guy that they have. Like, not saying Maxey's going to be as good as Lillard. I don't think he ever will be, but
we'll get to that. There's like, actually a good
whoever
email.
Whoever they get plus Maxey equals that. Is that like enough of a thing? And that's just me being sentimental because I like the young guys. I always like the young guys. I always have. You want to keep the young guys. There's a good email from a listener that we'll get to in a minute that has that sort of option in it. I'm curious to see what I know. What my answer is, curious to see what yours. By the way, you used flying around out there, which is only legal in football. You're not allowed to talk about basketball players flying around out there. Only football players are flying around out there. Baseball players fly around out there. Shane Victorino flew around out there all the time.
You would never describe baseball players flying around out there. It's football player talk.
No, I use it all. I love guys flying around out there.
The other guy, which I'm sure you and Mike talked about quite a bit, is it weird that I was surprised when I saw the Summer League roster that Isaiah Joe was 6'3"? For some reason, all season long, I thought of him as like a 6'6" wing. And I
didn't list him at 6'3"?
He's 6'3" and a quarter or 6'3" and a half or something, yeah.
My measurements, and obviously my tape measure is very good, I have him at 6'5".
They didn't have him at 6'5".
I'll check it.
Yeah, check it. Actually, before we get to that, I want to talk about one of our sponsors because it was a great week for our sponsors in that we got a lot of great emails about our sponsors. I got this one from Adam Ksebe. Not from Adam Ksebe. Obviously, that would be cheating. It came from Greg, and the subject line was, Ricky sponsor saves the day again. He says, I always say I'm immune to advertising, and I always skip podcast ads, except for the Ricky, and here's why. SeatGeek got me into the Mike Scott Live Ricky with a great deal. Kornblau got my car leasing company to pay me hundreds of dollars they owed me. Stateside's become my favorite vodka. I'm plus 400 on the year with DraftKings. Body Bio has kept me from cramping under after workouts. By Nature calmed down my cat shitting problems. And now Adam Ksebe to the rescue. My wife and I are looking into adding a second floor to our home, a $150,000 renovation. Even though we live in PA and it's not a regular refinance, I reached out to Ksebe to see if he could help us navigate through the renovation mortgage process. He put me in touch with someone right away who was able to get me hooked up with a renovation mortgage specialist. They explained to me the process. We know exactly how to move forward, and I'd be nowhere without Adam Ksebe, the process realtor. My Ricky advertising bingo card is almost full now. Me as well. I refinanced with Adam Ksebe. Then I had to move, so that was a waste. But Adam put me in touch with TJ Fiorillo, who was my North Jersey realtor, who helped me find this lovely home in Springfield. Buying a house is a pain in the fucking ass, and so is selling one. Especially, well, selling one's a little bit easier right now. But there's a lot you need. You need Adam Ksebe, the official realtor of the process, especially if you're looking at Delaware or Maryland, where he is the expert, but also can connect you with realtors wherever you are because he is the expert. Also, as Greg's email mentioned, refinancing, you go to Ksebe. He's got a guy for you. 302-864-8643. 302-864-8643. Call him or text or email adam@processrealtor.com. Adam Ksebe, the official realtor of the process. All right. Isaiah Joe's height?
I saw it at 6'4", so
okay.
I'd list him at 6'5", personally, because he's so thin.
Yeah,
give him a little extra height on that.
So he, with Maxey out, had some more ball handler type stuff in the Boston game specifically. Just interesting for me to see him develop as like a guard rather than a wing. I thought of him as 3-and-D wing guy, but it does seem like his skill set will lead itself to a world in which he can be a more of a guard than like a small forward wing type guy.
I mean, if you're not a perimeter initiator, in my mind, you're a wing. To me, there's not really a difference there. So I think there's a chance that he's a second. Like he could do some creation. I think there's. Yeah,
I think he can be initiator, is what I'm saying. Like not obviously he still has a way to go, but he's got more of that skill set than I thought he did.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be like, hey, he's running the offense. And so in at least my definition of those guys is if you're not running the offense, then and you're not like Paul George initiating as a big wing type of thing, then you're just like a collection of guys. Isaiah, I think he's got some of that skill. I thought the behind the back bounce pass in the pick and roll to B-Ball Paul in the Atlanta game was ridiculous. He's certainly got some stuff. I think there's easy stuff he misses. I think that's like because he's just not naturally a distributor. But he did play. I think MOC reminded us that he did play point guard in high school. As a lot of good players do, I think sometimes. But yeah, he's not like just a shooter. There is some more offense to his game. There's some more creation abilities. There's a couple like finishing inside a little bit here and there. Yeah, and I just love that he took like 13 threes in that one game. I think he's been like above 10 in every game. I think that's what he's supposed to do. That's how you're going to play, and I appreciate it. And he seems to always just like total knack for 4-point plays. That's fun. He should be definitely fighting for a rotation spot, especially if they have to trade multiple things in a Ben trade.
Yeah, I agree with you. He looks like a player. I mean, he looked like a player at times last year. He definitely looks like a player. By the way, with Maxey out, Daishen Nix is like pretty good. I'm sure you talked about him once. He's a point guard. Like that guy is a point guard. He's specifically a point guard and is pretty raw, but can definitely play. Like he's an interesting guy.
I was talking to Mike about it last week. He was definitely overweight at G League Ignite, and he lost like 15 pounds, I think they said, between the end of the season and now. And he looks significantly slimmed down, but still big and physical and really capable with the ball in his hands. He hit a 3. He shot like 18. The reason he didn't get drafted is because he shot like 18% from 3 over the course of the season. The people that watched him more said it was because the shot is not terrible, or not as terrible as 18% is, but that because there was just nobody else out there to really pass to in that second unit, because he was backing up Jalen Green as the primary initiator there. But yeah, he hit a 3 last night in the corner. That was nice. I think he's getting confident there. I think he's good. I would love Dacian Nix on a 2-way. I really would. I would like him more than Rajon Tucker. I don't think Rajon Tucker is an NBA player as much as I enjoy the dunk contest stuff. I just don't think he has it. He seems to be like just glamour athleticism without like using it in a way that actually helps win games. And now I'm parsing 2-way guys, and I usually always like 2-way guys, but Rajon, I'm sorry, he's just not getting there for me. So I would definitely prefer Aaron Henry and Dacian Nix in those 2-way spots. And
then Springer is definitely pretty raw on offense, like incredibly raw, you know.
Yeah, Neubeck talked about it in his piece. There's flashes of it where you're like, oh wow, that's very capable. And there's whether it's like dicing into the lane, jumping off of 2 feet, finding passes, using his core strength to like bump guys off spot and then go up with it. But there's definitely a lot of rawness. And I think in Tennessee, the reason I had him so high is because I think in Tennessee I sort of wrote that off to there being not that many. They're a really bad shooting team at Tennessee, and the Rick Barnes' offense I thought was just like very not creative and just and very stuck. But I think that maybe gave Springer a little bit too much. Let him off the hook a little bit too much to be like, well, you got to find guys, and sometimes he doesn't see guys as much. He doesn't see the extra pass quite as easily as I'd like him to. But yeah, the offense is raw. I think MOC compared him to Zaire, and I think that's wrong. I think that there's certainly a lot more creation ability in his bag. I think there's an easier shot. Zaire took like a month and a half to shoot always. There's just a much more capable like 3-and-D guard there that can actually do some stuff. It's raw for sure, and that's why he's one of the youngest guys in the class. So I'm not concerned about it, but the big thing is that right now the defense like super plays. Like he looks really good on defense. He is strong and physical and stays with guys and bodies up and gets a hand up and doesn't gamble too much, which he's really like wise beyond his years defensively at that spot. And so I think that I'm still happy with the pick. Absolutely. Like two or three summer league games is not going to do it, but I would have liked to see him a little bit more. You know, it's easy to see what he has to work on, right? I would like to see him a little bit more advanced in some areas. He's got to get better as a shooter. He's got to become a quicker shooter. He's got to eliminate some of the mid-range. It seems like he beats guys off the dribble and then like kind of settles for a mid-range or like a contested type of thing. I'd rather see him get all the way to the rim more often. But I still really like him, and it's just this is what you get when you draft the youngest guy in the draft.
I was fixing my chair. There we go. Well, we got an email from John about that, and obviously yours won't be Zaire Smith. The answer to your answer to this question won't be. But John says, who do you think is the best aspirational NBA comp for Springer? Mine is Jimmy Butler. Butler started out as more of a defensive guy who grew into a competent scorer, plus their frames are very similar, both very sturdy and have what look like slightly disproportionately long torsos. What do you think? What is your best aspirational NBA comp for Springer?
He does have a long torso. He looks like a baby with a big torso. I think Jimmy's bigger. He's significantly bigger and longer. I think it's Drew. I think Drew is, like everyone says, Drew for a lot of players. And I think when we were talking to MOC, it was like there's a reason why there's just not that many Drews, because it's just tough to have that level of defense and competitiveness combined with really functional, solid offensive play. And so I think that's the guy I would aspire for him to be, which is like off ball for a while and then eventually gets better, good enough on ball to where the defense really plays as as your initiator and also like switchable. Yeah, I think he's going to be very good. I think it just might take him a little more time than I wish it would.
And then John also says, what are your thoughts on acai bowls? Are they here to stay, or are they the next quinoa or kale? Now, quinoa or kale, they both stuck around, right? I mean, I don't know. Your thoughts?
I don't usually have much because it's usually got like a nut medley in an acai bowl, so I can't do it.
I've never had one. My wife has them all the time. There's a place down from our street in Delco that had them. She got them. I don't have any opinion on it. Sorry. I love quinoa. Kale, I'm indifferent on. So,
can we talk B-ball Paul for a sec?
Yeah,
he's great. Mm-hmm. I love him. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love him. In the Atlanta game, I didn't see anybody tweeting about this, but in the Atlanta game, Cassidy Hubbarth gave B-ball Paul and Maxey the post-game interview. Did you watch it?
No.
It was really funny. They're like goofing around with each other in like nervous ways. Maxey's clearly more comfortable on the mic than Paul is, but still like goofy with each other. And at the end of the interview, Paul Reed goes, "Wait, can I say something for a second?" And Maxey starts laughing and walks away, and he just starts like shouting out people, like shouts. I think he's like parents and like maybe coaches and teachers. Like it was very funny. Like Cassidy was like, "All right, B-ball Paul, take control." It was really very delightful, and he played great in that game. I was there's obviously a lot of just like, please Paul, just like get in this box, like just do the things. And sometimes it's like 14 like Thad Young pivot foot, like driving in, being weird. Like he's just not quite coordinated about that yet with the ball in his hands or as a guy with touch, but he does finish weirdly at times and makes it work. But like the defense is real. It's straight up real. Like Sharif Cooper on Atlanta is a really, really good player, can get into the lane against anybody, excellent passer. Finishes craftily inside, really good. Shouldn't have dropped to 48, obviously, but Sharif couldn't like dribble with Paul near him. Like he's just too long and like instinctive. And I think that like he just needs to. The shot is obviously funky as hell, and we're gonna keep saying that. But like he works his ass off in the offensive glass. He keeps getting offensive rebounds. He gets put back dunks. Like there is a way you can play with Paul Reed on your team as the backup center. And he needs to be groomed to do that in next year's playoffs, regardless of what happens with Ben. Like he needs to be given a chance to continue to work towards that. He can't just be buried on the bench as we like forget what happened in last year's playoffs and many other previous years' playoffs when the Sixers backup center can't defend in space and gets played off the floor, or can't do enough offensively, and there's like stuck in the mud, and that is a Paul Reed reference. Too much offense. It's just like not enough. It's just like we gotta know, even though it's going to be like occasionally painful because Paul Reed is scattered and still raw even at his age. But like we have to put in the work during the regular season, which is what Milwaukee did. Put in the work during the regular season to know that in the playoffs, we're going to need this guy or somebody like this guy or better than this guy. But like this kind of playing style needs to be a possibility in the playoffs. It can't just be like, here's another like 0-calorie Joel Embiid backup. Like he does 1/10 of what Joel does. So like it'll probably work out, right? And it never does.
Well, good thing they signed Andre Drummond so Doc Rivers can play him instead. Like we all know what's going to happen, right? I mean, like, what's going to happen. This thing that you're talking about is not going to happen. It isn't. And I agree with you. The only thing that makes me nervous about Paul Reed, you just mentioned there, is that there's some players where everything looks sort of like scattered and funky and weird, and they're 19 or something, and he's not. So that part of it, but physically, like when you see him guarding somebody one-on-one, like you're mentioning, he is very toolsy in his physical, in his athleticism, but also how he's built, I think, can play that role. But we all know what's going to happen. Like we all know that Doc Rivers is going to play Andre Drummond too much, and we're going to get to the playoffs, and this is not good. Now look, maybe in the series of moves that will happen, at some point, there will be somebody who is more capable of doing it than Paul Reed is, and maybe this just becomes an afterthought. But if if those are the two center type players on the team, then we're never going to see the thing that you're saying that is happening. We're just not. I don't believe it, that we're going to see.
Yeah, it just can't. Like I really don't mind the Drummond signing on its own, but it can't be the like, well, we have to play this guy at the expense of having some switchability offensively and defensively in the playoffs, because we've seen it too much, and like we just can't keep making the same exact mistakes. Like it cannot happen.
Well, who knows? So we got several notes about this for this JJ Redick thing. The first person to send it to me was a gentleman named Mike Small. Mike's got a podcast too, so go listen to Mike's podcast. Sam sent it to me. A bunch of people sent it to me. So this was on, I didn't know if you know this, but JJ Redick still has a podcast with Tommy Alter, and they this happened. So let me play this for you.
Low.
Oh wait, hold on.
Like this question, Mike M. Which NBA podcaster do you think would make the best player? Interesting. Woj. So let's go down. Woj, Zach Lowe, Nate Duncan. Not going to say the name of the Philly podcast. No. They're at the bottom of the list too. Who else is? We need somebody with some size. Like who's tall? I mean, can we count Jalen?
That's all we needed from it. So I just love that. Look, everybody says to me, JJ Redick's in your head, yada yada yada. This guy goes, Woj, Zach Lowe. I'm not going to say the names of the Philly guys. Like, I'm sorry, we're firmly planted in the skull of JJ Redick.
Just like JJ, I play Tuesday nights. Come scout me. Before you make a decision, let's just like take a look. Like watch the tape. That's all.
Wow. So you want to be like considered that you can play.
I mean, I'm better than Woj and Lowe. Well, I'm probably not Nate Duncan. He seems tall, but like there's probably better NBA podcasters than Zach and Woj.
In terms of
in terms of like
playing.
best player capabilities. Yeah, of course.
Well, I would bet. Yeah, I don't know about Zach Lowe. I mean, Zach can probably play, right? No, he doesn't
play. Come on,
I don't know.
Zach. If you play, tell me you play, and if you play, then come play Tuesday nights.
I think Zach could probably. Well, he's in New York.
No. He's like, isn't he like a water polo guy or something? There's not basketball. There's not basketball in there.
Well, JJ, we said the name of your. Oh, I don't think we said the name of your podcast. So hey, Tommy. Hey, Zach. How are you? How are you guys? I hope you're enjoying this episode. Body Bio. We got an email from Derek about Body Bio. I wanted to reach out and tell you about two positive experiences I had with your sponsors. The first is short and a bit of a thank you. I've dealt with muscle cramping my whole life. Random leg cramps would occur, sometimes at night when I was in the middle of sleeping. That was me too. It was bad. I learned to take potassium pills after strenuous activities or tough leg workouts, but the pills had to be taken with food or would upset my stomach. After your first ad for Eatolite, I purchased, started using one capful daily. It did the trick. My workouts are better. I don't cramp during yoga poses. It's been really game-changing. You said it helped you, and I figured it was worth a try. Thanks again for the suggestion. There you go. Body Bio is Eatolite. Eatolite. Now, we told you about Eatolite. We told you about Calm. Body Bio also, which is, locally owned and operated, family-run business. Liposomal vitamin C. I'm going to be straight with you. Vitamin C from food, vitamin C from the, when you take the pills, it is all water soluble, which means it goes into your body. You've heard that phrase before. You pee it all out. You take a vitamin C supplement or something and your pee's, bright yellow. That's what happens because it's water soluble. So it goes into your body, goes all over the place. But liposomal vitamin C from Body Bio gets to your cells. It's not water soluble. It needs to get to your cells and go right in. So basically, you're getting the same amount of vitamin C into your body, but you're keeping more because your cells are made of lipids. So Body Bio's vitamin C doesn't get dissolved until it gets to your cells. All that stuff, Body Bio, 20% off everything. BodyBio.com, RTRS20. Try the Eatolite, try the Calm, try the liposomal vitamin C. Stay healthy. Vitamin C is very important for your health. RTRS20, BodyBio.com. All right. Any further message for JJ Redick before we move on? No, I think that's.
I think Tommy is more likely to come scout me, but take video, whatever you need, Tom.
Joel Embiid has not signed his Supermax. I think at this point, we have to know that he's not signing the Supermax until they're done making moves this offseason. There have been enough players who have signed extensions. Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant. Like, the fact that he hasn't signed it, I'm not worried, but it's absolutely notable. It's 100% notable when players of his ilk are eligible for them. If everything's hunky-dory, they sign them. He hasn't signed it yet. I think it's worth noting. Absolutely. You feel any different on that one?
No, I think it's totally worth noting. I think if I was him, I'd be like, what are you doing to make sure that the same things that happened the past few years, which is we're very successful when I'm out there and extremely struggling when I'm not, how do we think that that's not going to happen in the playoffs? And Daryl hasn't answered that yet. The organization hasn't answered that yet. Doc certainly hasn't answered that yet. So if I'm him, I'd be like, I'm holding on to the leverage that I have, which is signing this long-term contract for as long as possible. I don't think that they're trying to like nickel and dime him here.
No. I don't think so. That's exactly the wrong way you do that in the NBA. You don't do that in the NBA.
Yeah.
You know?
So I would say it's just Joel being like using the leverage that he has as a superstar player to try to get him to make the moves that need to be made so they can be a championship team, so they can succeed during Joel's prime.
Seth Partnow from The Athletic did a thing where he broke NBA players into tiers. Now, he repeated, this is not a ranking of players. And they went so far as to not put numbers next to the players when they ranked them. However, the title of the chart is 2021 NBA player tiers, the top 125. You're ranking them, buddy. I'm sorry. So there's only 3 Sixers that made the list, obviously. Embiid is in tier 2A. So these are the players that...
Wait, wasn't there 4?
4 what?
Sixers that made the list of the top 125?
Embiid, Simmons, Harris, who else?
I think Seth made it.
Oh, did he?
And I think he had Seth over Tobias.
Oh, then I missed him. I'll look as we're talking. So Embiid is in 2A with Anthony Davis, Steph Curry, Luka Doncic. Those are the only players in 2A. He is behind 1A. There's only 3 players, Giannis, Durant, and LeBron. 1B, Harden, Kawhi, Jokic. I'm sorry, Curry is in 1B. And then 2A is just 3 players, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic. Feels about right if we're breaking them into tiers. I do think he is better than those 2 players that are in his tier, and I would and could make the argument that he's better than Jokic, but it feels about right to me. You?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't mind, not crowning Embiid as whatever he is until he actually proves it in the playoffs. Not that he hasn't been good in the playoffs, but they have to go further before we can say with more certainty he is there's a difference. The difference between centers, I guess, in the modern NBA, maybe this wasn't the case in the past, but I think over the last 5-10 years, centers really need circumstances to be good for them to succeed. Whereas a more perimeter initiator like Harden or Luka or any of those guys can succeed on their own. They set the tone. And it's just hard to be an offensive tone setter as a big man. Jokic obviously does it, but then he needs help on the defensive end. It's just to strike the right balance, Joel, because you can't double Jokic because he's such a good passer. You can double Embiid to get the ball out of his hands, but it should be easy to make him pay for it. And it should be easy to not have to dump the ball into the post all the time. But the Sixers have not had capably, especially in the playoffs, offensive firepower to contend with that. And it's really cut Joel off at the knees. And it's hard for guys like that to succeed on their own. He really needs the circumstances to be right. And maybe that's an indictment on him as a player or the kind of player it is or the modern NBA or something. But he's obviously been good and the Sixers have been good, but they haven't been good enough. And so that's why I'm fine ranking him outside of the top, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, offense is more important than defense, but his defense is also pretty awesome, that goes into that as well, but, whereas I think some guards, you need a structure around them to be able to be okay on defense. I don't think you need anything for Embiid to be great on defense, and he has showed that repeatedly. You were right about Curry. We'll get to that in a second. So Ben Simmons ranked in tier 3C with Draymond Green, Pascal Siakam, Russell Westbrook, and Zach LaVine. An interesting combination of players, but does feel about right.
Sure.
Like Green at his best obviously is a tier above Ben Simmons, but he's at his best less often now. Yeah. And, he's certainly aged. Same with Westbrook. Siakam and LaVine, you need the right things around them. I would take both players over Ben, but it feels like the right tier.
All of those guys feel like we can be excellent in the right circumstances or pretty bad in the wrong circumstances. That feels like a wide variance of a tier. And I think some of those guys have benefited from the circumstances and some of those guys have suffered from those circumstances.
Seth Curry in 4A, which is a giant tier, but Seth Curry right next to Robert Covington, Nick Vucevic, LaMelo Ball, Kyle Lowry, Malcolm Brogdon, Kemba Walker. Yeah, Kemba Walker, Julius Randle, Joe Ingles, Joe Harris, Jeremy Grant, Gordon Hayward, Fred VanVleet, Domantas Sabonis. All that to say...
What an odd collection.
Yeah, it does seem like CJ McCollum, he is valued higher than I would guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that to me is the argument. Like, Seth was great last year. If you think Seth can do exactly that for another 2 seasons, then I really get why you don't trade for CJ. I really, really get why you think you need something better. Because I don't think Seth is better than CJ. But I don't think it's that far off if he's the guy that he was last year. CJ obviously can create more one-on-one. He's probably a little bit better defensively, but not much, just because he's a little bit longer.
His willingness to shoot is way
higher. His willingness to shoot is higher, but we've also never seen CJ over a long stretch of time be the focal point of an offense. Not that he wouldn't be. I mean, I guess he would be here. But in a Seth running like a sort of somewhat amalgamation of a JJ role in a previous situation. Seth's better, of course. Or CJ's better than Seth, of course. But I think that this is another indication of that. Like, the gap is not so wide that you'd go like, hey, let's jump at the chance to trade Ben for Seth or CJ. I keep saying the same name. Because you gotta shoot higher than that. You gotta see if you can get somebody better.
And then finally, Tobias Harris ends up in 4B with players like Al Horford, Brook Lopez, Karis LeVert, Christian Wood, DeAndre Hunter, Derrick Rose, Dylan Brooks, Jay Crowder, Yusuf Nurkic, Kristaps Porzingis, Marcus Smart. You mentioned a strange combination of players.
Very strange.
Yeah, it feels about right, I guess. A lot of players that need specific situations to be successful. Basically.
Yeah, I would flip Seth and Tobias. I respect Seth and the things that he did, and the.
I'd rather have Seth than Tobias.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. I think Seth, we saw in the Atlanta series over and over again that he's just not playable defensively for large stretches of the playoffs, and that would presumably get even more pronounced as you get further into the playoffs. Tobias's weaknesses would be mitigated in a world where there were other quicker shooters around him, and the Sixers didn't have enough of those. They didn't have enough guard initiators that could just take the load off of him. If he could just be his
strengths are
forward.
But his strengths are not that useful. Like, if you're not going to shoot quick, if you're a good shooter who does not shoot quickly, I just don't know. Like, he's an average defender who, and when I say average, like, specifically because he can really only defend one position, like one specific position. He takes too long with the ball. He does not create for others. He does not shoot quickly. Like, all the numbers line up to him being a good player. He is a good player. But I don't know, man. I don't know. What's his role on a great team? His role is probably not a starter.
No, I disagree. I think he's the third guy on a team with Joel, and whether it's Dame or just naming guys like a Kyle Lowry or a Zach LaVine or like those kinds of guys. Like, put that there, and Tobias's role really opens up and makes a lot more sense. I think it's just, does he have weaknesses? Absolutely, but like, he played really well. He played to his strengths last season. He eliminated a lot of the just dribbling around, although it came back in the playoffs. I feel like he is in that same tier of those guys, like, needs the circumstances to be better around him. And playing with Ben and Joel, two guys who, one obviously doesn't shoot, and Joel you'd prefer to have him down low. It just makes him be a Robert Covington type player, where it's just like, hey, just like be a catch and shoot guy. And there's more to him than that. And that's not his strength. Like, obviously the weaknesses are frustrating. Obviously, like, the tunnel vision sometimes is frustrating, although there were times towards the end of the season where he started opening up his vision a little bit. But I think the defense is super playable. I think that they switched with Tobias over during the playoffs. Like, it was like, hey, if his guy and Ben's guy or his guy and Danny's guy or whatever it is screen for each other, they're switching. And I think he's just proven himself to be like totally fine in that regard. Nobody's seeking out Tobias during the playoffs to like hunt him down. And so that crosses a threshold for me of like playable, where Seth just hadn't been. And I think it's just, if Tobias and Seth were the same size, if Tobias was 6'2", then like, I agree, yes, for sure. But I just, being such a negative Tobias guy that I was before, I have to acknowledge that he was significantly better this year. Did he like regress to the kind of player he has always been at times, and especially in the playoffs? Absolutely. But like, I think part of that is because of the predicament that the Sixers found themselves in, with really very few perimeter ball handlers and guys who would create for others.
Honest question, not being a dick, because I'm not like shit on Tobias guy anymore. He is what he is, and was better this year, and like, good guy, yada yada. You got to do this every time. The playoff start, it's the Lillard and Embiid Sixers, and you have two choices to start at power forward in the playoffs: Jay Crowder or Tobias Harris. Who would you pick?
I think it's probably close. I think it depends on who those other guys are. Like, if Danny's out there and another two guard that can shoot a little bit, say it's I was gonna say
it's Seth. Just say it's Seth.
But Seth can't defend. So Seth and Dame as a 1-2 is tough. Is tough for like long stretches. But say it's two Dannys, like double Danny. Then I would say Tobias. Having a guy that can do a little bit more creation, I think, is helpful there. Whereas Jay Crowder gives you that unconscious shooting, but hopefully you can get that with a Danny, with a Korkmaz, a Niang type of thing, and giving it a little bit more. Tobias can run the pick and roll. Tobias can operate from the post and get you a bucket. Like, sometimes you need that. Sometimes if Dame is getting blanketed, you need that. Sometimes if Embiid is off or getting doubled, you need that. Like, I like, there is some creation usually for himself with a little bit for others in Tobias's game. And we saw him like get really hot at times during the season with the ball in his hands, and that's helpful. So I would say Tobias. I hear the point. If they didn't have those like more stocky unconscious shooters like a Danny, then I could see you going for Jay Crowder, but I would still go Tobias.
I love this tweet from LL Pavorsky. I know he is young, but does Springer have a Zion vibe to him? Like, so there's like
I see what he means. I see what he means.
I know what he means. What makes it better is I know he's young, but like, Zion's only like 20. Like,
yeah. That's it.
There's just so much to this.
I see the like zagging. There's like a 2-footed zagging like jump stop like
big butt
body situation, big butt, all that stuff.
LL Pavorsky, the first sponsor of the Ricky. Hey, the cabana sale, the summer cabana sale is going on now. LLPavorsky.com, up to 75% off. LL Pavorsky, cartoon LL Pavorsky. It's just the greatest. 222 writes to Ricky Sanchez listeners have purchased engagement rings from LL Pavorsky, including the guy who helped me find my house up here in New Jersey, TJ Fiorillo. TJ, I think, is like number 180 something or something. So if you want an engagement ring, if you want any kind of jewelry, like now's the time with LL. It's always the time, but with the summer cabana sale, now is the time. Cartoon LL. Jaden Springer, Young Zion, LL Pavorsky, 215-627-2252, 215-627-2252, Lee at LLPavorsky.com. Make an appointment before you go over there, especially for an engagement ring. Just stop by otherwise, but if you want an engagement ring, make an appointment. Tweeted him at LL Pavorsky, supporter of our charities, Providence Animal Center, coded by kids. LL Pavorsky Jewelers.
Himself a Young Zion.
So the Ben Simmons and
similar chest, barrel, very broad. I see it.
The Simmons and Lillard situation dragging on. Kendrick Perkins says that Ben willing to sit out camp. I actually think that's probably true. The Warriors brain trust split on the Draymond Green Ben Simmons combination, which I would be split on as well. This comes from Chuck. And it alludes to something that you said earlier. It's been almost a week since the Olympics ended, and I'm completely miffed that there's been zero news on the Damian Lillard front. I'm starting to think Neil O'Shea is delusional enough to think that adding McLemore, Snell, and Zeller and running it back is somehow a good idea. O'Shea reminds me of Walter White when he returns home after Hank is killed and tries to convince his wife and kid to go on the run with him. We're fine, okay?
Sniping a Breaking Bad spoiler right at everybody.
Yeah, well... If you haven't watched it yet, we're fine, okay? We're fine. Everything's going to be fine. And what is Dame doing? He gave them an ultimatum, and O'Shea literally did the exact opposite. What are we even doing here anymore? We all know Simmons cannot return to this team. In fact, I'm convinced Ben would actually refuse to show up. If Dame is scared to request a trade before the season, what's the move? Do you take a pick/young player from a team like the Spurs? And then JP asks, if the same situation, if you were given the opportunity to just get the Levine deal done, Levine for Simmons now, would you stop waiting for Lillard because of the potential of what could happen? So what are your answers to those? Yes,
I would. I don't think the Bulls are trading Levine. I think that they've had a pretty nice offseason and should be firmly in the playoffs this year. And so I think they're like, we are becoming like this, trying to be the powerhouse that we can afford to be, or at least like pay like we're not a small market team anymore.
Right. He's just saying hypothetically though.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I think absolutely. I think the odds of a Lillard trade are, as much as I think the Sixers are the leader in the clubhouse, I still think that they are very volatile. Portland could decide to keep him. They could trade him to wherever. It could get ugly, whatever it is. Guys could get hurt. Who knows? So I think Levine is good enough now and projects good enough for the future, where you would make it work. And so I would do that right now, and say that is enough of a return. And you could also not have to trade Maxey in that trade, as we were talking about before. I don't think there's really much of a chance that Ben would report to camp. I think after all this, why would anyone want that? Why would anyone want him to start playing again? I think that we
didn't talk much about, just to that point, we didn't talk much about, well, we talked about it, but the way that Doc Rivers obliterated him after that playoff game, like, it's been clear, not a Ben guy. This guy right here, not a Ben guy. But like, what is Doc Rivers doing? Like at that point, like saying that he's not sure if he can be the point guard on a title team. Like, you bullshitted all year long. Like, how hard is it to just do it one more time? I don't know. It just seemed like a fucking dumb thing to do.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't like a savvy move. I think sometimes he just like, I think he's been around a long time. He's succeeded at a long time, and he can kind of just say whatever the fuck he wants. Maybe it's just like, yeah, I'm just answering your questions honestly. I wish that he didn't do that. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It's frustrating, but I think, like, you know, especially after the, like, how things ended in with the Clippers for him, you would think he would just be a little bit more delicate. I don't know.
What would you do? Okay, so you have here's two choices ahead of you. The two choices are this. You know that the Lillard situation is what it is. That's hovering over. Excuse me.
Oh man. Wow, it's such a tough situation. I can't even say it.
I'll just say, as you get your voice back, I'll just say that I think him sitting for an extended period of time is not that big of a deal, especially after, like, the AD situation. He sat for a long time.
It would just be a circus at the beginning of the series. The difference is the AD situation is a team that wasn't a contender, didn't have Embiid, and it wasn't at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think it's more of a circus, not during the beginning of the year, but I think not as a contender is a good point, and Embiid being there is a good point also. And just, like, how bad it ended, it would definitely be circus-like for sure. But I think after a while, after the first, like, week or two, it would probably go away, and everyone would just be like, he's not here, so we're moving forward with this. It would be ugly. It wouldn't be fun. But I think that the odds of him coming to camp, of Rich Paul sending him to camp, of Doc, like, welcoming him there and wanting to be like, whatever, let's go. I think it's all very unlikely, but certainly you lose some leverage there. I think if there just becomes an ugliness there might be just, you know, ownership, which has proven very skittish in the past, as we've seen on many fronts. They might succumb to, like, just get him out of here. I want to go back to smiling and pumping my fist on the sideline with my weird lips. I'm Josh Harris. Yeah, I mean, I hope it just happens for everybody's sake sooner than that.
So here are your two choices. Lillard's situation is what it is. Behind door number one is you can trade Ben for Zach LaVine straight up. Behind door number two is the Spurs with, let's say, 3 first-round picks and DeJounte Murray. So, behind door B, door number 2, you have these things that could help you get Lillard without being sure that Lillard's going to be available. Door 1, you have Zach LaVine. Which one would you take?
I would go door 1. I think you can pretty easily facilitate a Lillard trade with some other team and use some of their assets and do a 3-teamer with that. I mean, the Warriors trade makes the most sense. And you mentioned Draymond. I think that if I was the Warriors, I would find a way to do it. I would just find a way to make that happen. If I knew the Warriors, like, what other offers they had on the table for, say, like, Kuminga and Moody and, like, some future pick swaps and shit, which is going to be, like, in the late firsts, then maybe I would say, that's actually a better option with those guys. But, like, they could have, like, they could be the number 1 defense and number 1 offense with those players available. And I think Ben and Draymond, especially Draymond, is creative enough to, like, find a way to make it work on the court, and then they could rest each other and play switchable and all that stuff and find just, like, so many passes to those guys. I think that I would do it if I was them. I obviously have a vested interest in them doing it because I want the 3-team trade to happen, and I don't think Wiseman is good. I do think Moody is good, and I think Kuminga certainly has a ton of upside. But I think that bridges the gap for Golden State of, like, winning now on both ends of the court and also, like, eventually growing together with whoever stays out of that group.
The mailbag is brought to us by Kinetic Skateboarding. Get 9.1% off your first order with promo code Dave Silver at kineticskateboarding.com. You just got to go to their Instagram to see the sneakers. New colorways for the New Balance Numeric 288s are like a bright green and a really off-white, really clean-looking sneakers. And they're doing raffles all the time. These Pink Pig Golf Nike SB Dunk Lows. Ben always loves the raffles. KineticSkateboarding.com. KineticSkateboarding.com. So Chuck, who asked not Chuck, JP, who asked the Zach LaVine question, has a non-basketball question. He says, how come you didn't answer that guy's question about people stealing his lunch from the refrigerator at work? Is it because that's never happened to you, or because you do it and you don't want to admit it? For the record, I hope he put ghost peppers in the sandwich. Everyone learned their lesson and no one died. Love the pod. Has that ever happened? It's never happened to me. No one's ever stolen my lunch from the fridge at work.
No, the cushiest thing, there's many cushy things about my job, but the cushiest thing is we get free lunch every day. And so,
what? They order lunch for you guys every day?
Every day, baby.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
That's
so
ridiculous.
We get an email the night before saying, here's what we're going to lunch. Send me your orders. We put it in. It's pretty good. Hard to beat. So sometimes the order will come like, oh, there's like feta cheese in there when I ask for no cheese, so I have to like scrape it off. But that's the worst that can happen. And I used to be the guy that when I was at How I Met Your Mother, I used to be the guy that got the lunches and stuff. And so I'm familiar with the process, and I never got a lunch wrong.
Let me tell you, when they put me in charge of comedy and I look to cut costs, paying for everybody's lunch is going to be the fucking top of my life.
I am firing you.
Well, I'm head of comedy. You can't. That's my new gig. This comes from Santosh. Hey, Spike and Mike, are we collectively underselling the impact that trading Simmons will have on the team's regular season? For a few reasons, including just how many minutes and games he played, he has provided remarkably consistent regular season value, with it increasingly looking like Simmons' trade may not fetch a true all-star in return, given the track record of how teams do after they trade a star player away without receiving one of similar caliber in return. How much do you think the Sixers' odds will be affected purely by the likelihood that they will either be the 3 seed or the 4 seed next season, assuming they don't get Dame? And more broadly, how do you think losing a player who simply played as many minutes and games will impact Embiid's workload, especially if they're losing more games and knowing how Embiid tends to respond in those situations? Boy, Santosh is worrying about the fucking wrong thing, but yeah. That's my response to him.
Yeah, for sure. Tyler told me not to be a punk last week, and I am one, but this is not something I'm worried about. I think is it possible to take a step back during the regular season? Like, sure. Like, of course. Like, depending on what they get. They were the number one seed last year. But that's what the Bucks did. And the Bucks were the best team in the regular season for like 2 straight years and then folded in the playoffs because they couldn't play a different way. So you should do the regular season. And it also doesn't matter. Like, the Heat made the finals and they were were they like the 6th seed 2 years ago?
Something like that, yeah.
And so it's just like seeding at a certain point just doesn't matter, and you just gotta win the games in front of you. Would I like the home court advantage? Like, of course, but it's not enough to be super concerned by like, we can't trade him because like we need regular season positioning, because like it hasn't mattered in the playoffs. Like, we lost to the Hawks. Like, pathetic.
So I thought I'd end on this one because I thought you would particularly enjoy this question that comes from Mark. As a Canadian baseball fan, I will always hold special admiration for Matt Stairs. Since Mike, at least, is a big Phillies fan, I would love if you could spend a few minutes, but feel free to go longer, paying homage to Stairs' pinch hit home run against the Dodgers in the 2008 NLCS. Is Stairs one of the first players that comes to mind when you think of that World Series victory, since without him there's at least a chance the Phillies wouldn't have beaten the Dodgers? Does that home run crack top 10 in all-time Philadelphia sports moments?
Yeah, it might be number 1 for me. Like,
really, number 1?
I like love that home run. That is
It's definitely top 10.
Stairs cracks one deep into the night. Like, unbelievable. It's a great call. The home run itself was mammoth and beautiful. And for it to be like Matt Stairs, who is just a delightful presence, and then him saying, I think was this the game that he then said like guys were like banging on him in the locker? There was a funny quote afterwards too. I loved it, and absolutely Matt Stairs is one of the first guys I think of in that World Series run, and that's like the thing that's the most fun part of championship runs, is because you have to count on contributions from like random people. That's why Bobby Portis is like gonna fucking be a legend in Milwaukee for the next 60 years. He's gonna retire. Bobby Portis is gonna retire in Milwaukee, like regardless of how the rest of his career goes. In like 2055. Bobby Portis is going to be like at a bar in Milwaukee, just like still recounting his like when Chris Paul like got in his face and he started laughing. Like, it's just he doesn't need to do anything else,
and he deserves that.
And he deserves it absolutely. And so that's the thing I miss, and I want that for us. And like, I wish we had like Anthony Tolliver or something like doing that for us. Like, give me George Niang like next season becoming a cult hero and like taking it to like B-Ball Paul obviously already is, but like on the highest stage. Like it was just like one play. That's all you need is like get us there. And because that Dodgers series was tough, I remember seeing like John Broxton just like slowly moping his way to the dugout was delightful. And I mean that series was brutal. I remember being very upset. There was a Victorino home run also earlier in that series that was huge in a game that they just like had no chance at, and all of a sudden they won. It was a very like they don't win this game. And there was a Bruntlett play. Eric Bruntlett, one of my least favorite players of all time, but like he had a couple moments in that run also.
Well, the other thing about, and I would assume this is for every city, but there's so many great moments, non-championship great moments, I think, in Philly sports history that would be arguable for the top 10. The Cliffley catch behind his back, like obviously the step over. There are a lot of, I think, those plays as well that did not result in championships that people would remember fondly. Obviously, the Super Bowl has fucking 5 of them. They won that one, but that's the tough thing with the top 10 Philadelphia sports moments is that I think you could make an argument for like 4 from the Super Bowl. You know,
sure.
The BG, the Corey Clement catch, obviously Philly. And are those the 3? Is there another one that would make it? I think those are probably the 3.
I mean, you could do the Patrick Robinson Vikings. Pick 6.
That was incredible. That was one of the best moments because I was there for that. Mm-hmm. That was one of the best moments I've ever.
Even in the first round, like Julio, like the play at the goal line against Atlanta,
where he just dropped it, or Julio dropped it. Yeah,
it went through his hands, but I think it was a good contest also.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything seems more magical when you look back and go, like, they won the Super Bowl after that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was just like, we fucking survived that game. That was an ugly-ass Falcons game.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun to win. I wish they did more of it.
If you don't fuck with
All right,
me,
we will talk to you middle of this week. And I don't know, maybe there'll be a trade. Probably not. So, are you down with TTP?
Yeah. You know that.
If you don't fuck with me, then I won't fuck with you.
If you don't fuck with me,
Then I won't fuck with you.
but if you fuck with me,
I'm gonna fucking kill you! Time for Plan B.